Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. We'd like to welcome everyone to Breakfast in the Class. We're going to start now promptly on time because we want to make sure David E. Ash makes his meeting. Apologies to the person who missed the meeting with David E. Ash yesterday from the class. But Breakfast in the Class is dedicated in loving memory of Nishmat Herzl Ben Shalom, Alav Shalom, for his fourth Askara, for the safety and speedy return of our Chayalim and Shibuyim in Eretz Israel, sponsored by his daughter Shayna Ishal. Also dedicated in loving memory of Nishmat Elliot R. Sutton, Alav Shalom, a man remembered for his low-key good deeds and quiet and generous acts of charity, from his niece and nephew Marlene and Jaime Mamie. I understand Elliot Sutton also had a tremendous sense of humor, from what people have told me. He's a very funny person. Is that correct? I don't know. Some of the people here know, maybe. Okay. What a special person he was, and he's remembered very fondly. They're also dedicated for the continued health of Chana Bat Tzimma Fega and for the Refuah Shlema of Eliyahu Shimon Mazal Fortuné. And the Week of Cobra was sponsored by David Yanish in honor of you and your unwavering commitment to doing good for the state of Israel and for others around you during these challenging times, today and every day before 9:30. My friends, we'd also like to welcome long-time listeners and first-time attenders, Mr. and Mrs. Mastery, all the way from Mexico. Chazak Baruch, very, very special. What is a chut to have you here with us. It's always wonderful when people cross over from the screen into the real-life version of our class. We really, really appreciate people coming. And every time someone comes who is a long-time listener and then attends, we always make mention of it because it's a special thing. All right, let's get cracking. I want to draw your attention to something that I think is very beautiful, that is very powerful. The pasuk says that Noach was ish tzaddik. Et Elohim et halech Noach. Noach walked with God. Very special terms that we have here. Tamim haya bedorotav. What does it mean, Tamim haya bedorotav? That he was whole. The Chachamim tell us that Noach was born already mahul. He was born with a Brit Milah. Who else do we know was born with a Brit Milah? Moshe Rabbeinu, excellent, okay? Interesting enough, by the way, we also find the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he was born, the entire house was filled with light. So, you find people that even from the time that they're a baby, they have a special, a holy, and elevated soul. Guy hasn't done anything yet. Hasn't learned something. It sounds like it was from Moshe, right? Unbelievable. We have all this beauty emanating from this person, this tzidkut emanating from this person. However you understand who Noach was, he was a very special man, and God decided that even though the world is going to be destroyed, Noach is going to survive. And then the pasuk says, so what did God say to Noach? Aseh lecha tevat atzeh gofer. I want you to go and build for yourself a ark made out of gopher wood. Okay? All right. Noach goes and he builds this teva, and our rabbis tell us that it takes Noach 120 years to be able to build this teva. It's an epic undertaking on the behalf of Noach. Now, if you think about it, how many years does Noach live? 970? I don't think so. Sammy, look it up. All right, how many years does Noach live? 970? I don't think is incorrect. You want to tell us? Did you just Google it? And it says 950 is the correct answer. Okay? Now, of 950, what percentage is 120 years? 16%? 12.6% of his life he spends building a teva. Rabbi Google is impeccable. 12.6 was it? 12.6% of his life he spends building a teva. I want to read you the words of Rashi. Rashi says, Harbe revach ve'atzala lefanav. Like we say every day in the Kaddish. V'revach v'hatzala lanu. Right? What does Esther say? What does Mordechai say to Esther? Revach v'hatzala ya'amod la'Yehudim mimakom acher. There's a lot of revach, there's a lot of space, there's a lot of saving that God could do for the Jewish people. How many ways could God have saved Noach? Exhibit A, Yonah gets thrown off a boat. What happens? He gets swallowed by a whale and he survives in the whale. God could have made a giant thing swallow Noach and his family. One answer.
The whale was on Pepsi.
On Pepsi AC. Right? Okay. What else could God have done? God could have taken Noach and his family, transported them al kanfei nesharim to Jerusalem. We know that the flood did not go to Eretz Israel, to Yerushalayim. Noach could have spent the flood in the Waldorf, right, had 3 minutes only from all the kosher restaurants in Ben Yehuda. I don't know which hechsher he eats, but okay, big deal. Depends on his hechsher, if he was tzaddik b'dorotav, not, okay. Guys, are you with me? How many ways could God have saved Noach? Many ways. And yet, what does Hashem tell Moshe Noach to do? Why did God make Noach bother with this building? Says Rashi, in order that the people of the generation of the flood should see Noach working on the teva, kuf chav shana, 120 years, and he's telling them, Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lavi mabul la'olam. Hashem is going to bring a flood to the world. Ulai yashuvu. Maybe they'll return. Those are the words of Rashi. So why is Noach commanded to build a teva? Your normal answer would be so that he gets saved from the flood. But Rashi is asking a much deeper question. God could have saved Noach from the flood with a plethora of different ways. So obviously that's not why Noach built a teva. Why did Noach build a teva? Because maybe the people would see Noach building the teva. Bill Cosby has a bit on Noach building the teva. It's very funny. It's less funny after the allegations came out, but it's still very funny. Still very funny. Bill Cosby joking about Noach. They're asking, the guy's building a boat. He's 400 miles from the ocean. They're like, hey Noah, what are you doing? Building a boat. Right? He says, it's 300 cubits. They said, what's a cubit? He says, I have no idea. Noach is building this boat for 120 years. We don't know why. The answer is that maybe the people will return. Now, my friends, we said already 120 years of Noach's life is 12.6% of Noach's life. Now, if you're Noach, I understand why this is important. But if you're God, imagine for a minute you were God, and you had this tzaddik on earth, the only tzaddik on earth. And he's giving you a little bit of pleasure in this world. And you're going to bring a flood. And you could save him, or you could have him build a teva. Galui v'yadua lefanecha. Hashem knows that how many people exactly is Noach going to convince? Zero. So aren't we back to square one with our question? God, who knows that no one is going to return, that no one is going to listen, he makes Noach spend 12.6% of his life engaged in a pointless exercise. Why? Ulai yashuvu. My friends, I want to share with you the Gemara. So that just proves the point. That proves the point. So I want to share with you the Gemara. There's a fabulous Gemara. The Gemara tells us that during the time of the Khurban, there was a judgment against the Jewish people. And the Gemara says that there was a machloket between midat hadin and midat rahamim, between the attribute of justice and the attribute of kindness. And midat rahamim is punishing, the bad people. That's what only the bad people. We should spare all the tzaddikim. And then midat hadin says, but the tzaddikim did not warn. They did not teach, they did not bring back to Teshuvah the people who were the Rishaim. So therefore, don't the tzaddikim also deserve to be punished? And Midat Harahamim says, but God, you know that the level of wickedness of the people of that generation was such that even if they would have went and warned and talked and tried, they wouldn't have done teshuvah anyway. Asks Midat Hadin. It is galui v'yadua in front of me. Is it galui v'yadua in front of them? I know that they won't return. But do the tzaddikim know? They don't know. They can't know for sure. And since they can't know for sure, what absolved them from making the effort in trying to bring them back to teshuvah? Even if they would fail. Now it turns out that if you read that Gemara carefully, you'll realize that the tzaddikim are being punished for not doing something that anyway would not have been done. Why? Because you don't know what would have been. Now again, I want to make this like razor sharp. It's not that you don't know what would have been if you would have tried. We're saying even in a scenario where we know that nothing would have happened. But since you don't know whether or not something is going to happen, you have no right to not engage in the job. My friends, so Noach, the tzaddik, the one tzaddik of the world, is sitting there with hammer and nails for 120 years. I learned from here a tremendous lesson. I learned from here the importance of making an effort to bring people back to teshuvah. You don't know which word, what action, what deed, what class, what minyan. You don't know what program, which Shabbat invitation is going to do it. So therefore, what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu going to ask of you in the world to come? Why didn't you try this? Oh, but I did try that. Then why didn't you try this and 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 this? We can never stop doing everything in our power to be able to influence and to be able to bring Yahadut, religion, Yirat Shamayim, Kiddusha, Judaism to every single one of our brothers and sisters on this earth. And look at tzaddik like Noach. This is what God has him do. How many times have I heard from people, Rabbi, you don't know. I tried already. I think there's a beautiful lesson in the 120 years of Noach. It's not a mistake that God hasn't built it for that long. 120 years is the maximum amount of life in general that we say that a person could achieve. That's the concept. What do we say to somebody? You know, how long should you live? Ad me'ah ve'esrim. You meet a guy, 100 years old, what do you tell him? Abal mi'ashrin. You meet a guy on his 120th birthday, what do you tell him? Have a nice day.
Tomorrow.
120 years. 120 years is the number. That's the number, right? What are we learning from Noach? That if you tried before, and if you tried another way, that doesn't absolve you from trying a new way. You don't know, Rabbi. I reached out to my brother. I spoke to my parents. I did this effort. I tried. I don't know. I did. That nothing absolves you. Says the Gemara in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, if you had children when you were young, have children when you're old. If you'd raise students when you were young, raise students when you were old. Who knows that in a more bitter way than Rabbi Akiva himself, who has 24,000 students that he loses and then starts again. If you're married when you're young, and then your wife or your husband passes away, the person should get married again in their old age. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva quoted a pasuk, Ba'erev al tanach yadecha, in the evening of your life, don't put your hand down. Carry on trying. Keep moving, keep going. Never say die. That's the idea that God is communicating to Noach. Noach, you're one man against the whole world. That does not absolve you from trying. You're one man against the world who in year 1 and year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 5 opens up the quarterly earnings and has 0 ba'alei teshuvah. How many people did you get to come to class, Noach? 0. You still doing the class tomorrow? Absolutely. We're opening up a Torah center. How many people came to your Torah Center next year? 0 people. What are we doing? We're having Hachnasat Orchim. We're going to do a big tish every Friday night. How many people came Noach this year? No people. What are you doing next year? Fikni. The Gemara, the Mishnah in Avot tells us the work is hard. The work is long. And still, says the Mishnah in Avot, Velo ata ben chorin lihibatel mimena. However hard you're working, whether or not it's up to you, whether or not the outcome is what you want, whether you're failing miserably, Velo ata ben chorin lihibatel mimena. You have no right to stop the work. My friends, the Gemara tells us about a certain rabbi. His name was Rabbi Preda. And Rabbi Preda had a certain student that the kid could not get it. So every time he would teach him something, the kid, you get it? No. 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 How many times? 400 times he had to teach him. I always loved that, by the way. You know, you get a person, they're like, Rabbi, is that speech, is it going to be a repeat? I'm coming to the first, is it going to be a repeat? I was thinking, Rabbi Preda, please help me. 400 times he taught the student. Anyway, one time, he teaches the student 400 times, he finishes 398, 399, 400. He says, you got it? Rabbi Preda is already wrapping his tefillin. The guy's like, no. He says, no, what happened? He goes, I saw that you were like a little bit edgy, you needed to go, so I wasn't able to focus. Rabbi Preda taught it to him another 400 times. I want to just tell you one thing. Rabbi Preda is a little bit better than me. The name Farhi, Pei is 80, Resh 200, Het is 8, Yud is 10. What does that equal? 298. Excellent. 298. Preda is how much?
280. 291. 290.
Down to that, hey, 299. A little bit better than me. I don't think I'd be able to do that. Rabbi Mizrahi is here with us. Imagine you had a student, you had to teach something to 400 times. What would you do?
Kick him out.
I don't know, I would jump off a bridge. I don't know, 400 times. And then the guy needs to learn another 400 times. The answer, my friends, is that it's not up to you. You're a teacher, what's your job? Teach. You're a rabbi, what's your job? Rabbi. You're a parent, what's your job? Parent. The kid's not listening. That has nothing to do with you. The kid not listening doesn't absolve you from your chiyuv to parent. And that's what we're learning from Noach for 120 years. He spends his whole life, until when do I have to do this? There's no point at which you're patur for the whole 120 years. My friend, I want to ask you one question. So why was Noach failing? I get that Noach has an obligation even if he's failing. I get it. And I get that you're never allowed to give up on that coworker sitting next to you. You're never allowed to stop inviting them for Shabbat, printing them out a nice Dvar Torah. I mean, you don't want to be annoying, right? But in the nicest possible, you're never absolved. I get it. But why did Noach fail so miserably? And I want to share with you something unbelievable. I want to share with you the most beautiful delusion that a person can have in this life. Ready for this? Rashi tells us that when the flood finally came, after 120 years, Noach builds the teva. And he's time to go up into the teva. And the pasuk says, and God took Noach into the teva from the rain. Vayizgor Adonai ba'ado. And God closes the teva ba'ado on him. And Rashi says, why did God need to take Noach into the Teva? Why did he need to go in because of the Geshamim? Says the Gemara, because Noach was Miktaneh Amana. He was someone who had a small amount of faith. Now obviously, we're referring to Noach on Noach's level. We're referring to a person that the Torah calls a tzaddik, Tamim, etc., etc. Ma'amin, Rashi says, ve'eno ma'amin. He was a believer and a not believer. Simultaneously. He was a believer, he believed the flood was coming. He built the boat. But he also didn't believe it was going to come. He didn't believe that it would get to the point where the flood would have to come. He didn't believe that God would not renege, that God would not have mercy. He didn't believe it. So Noach was Miktaneh Amana. Say the Sefarim something unbelievable. You know why Noach couldn't get people to believe in the flood? You know why he couldn't get them to come into the Teva with him? Because Noach himself wasn't 100% sure about the Teva. My friends, sometimes when we teach our children and we wonder why they're not getting the message. 400 times I told him. 400 times more I told him. How come it's not getting through? How come I'm not able to have an influence on my coworker that Judaism is the best thing in the world? How come I'm not communicating that? One of the answers might be to stop looking in their backyard and to start looking in your own. If I don't believe that there's a flood coming, I'm not going to be able to convince you that the flood's coming. In the back of my mind, what do I think? You're not coming. Or maybe, who knows? My friends, if we're not imparting emunah to our children, maybe it's because we're ma'amin ve'eno ma'amin. Maybe it's because we don't believe in our deepest, darkest corners of our mind, heart, soul, that Judaism is the best thing in the world. Maybe we kind of feel like, on the outside we have this simcha, but on the inside we're kind of like, you know what? I'm going to make the best of it, so it's going to be b'simcha, but, it would be so much easier if my name was Ryan or McCormick or something. So I want to suggest something. The next time you find yourself unable to communicate the beauty of Shabbat to someone, try every trick that you can to be able to communicate it in the best way you know how. But when you realize that you hit a brick wall, maybe stop working on them for half a minute and start working on yourself. Are you hearing me? Start working on your own relationship with Shabbat. Now you might think, but I already keep Shabbat. How could I increase my own Shabbat in order to communicate to my brother, my sister, my parents the importance? I want to influence people in my family to start keeping kosher. And it's not working, no matter what I'm doing. Maybe, of course, at the end of the day, they have free will. They could choose to do whatever they want, even if you try your hardest. But if you feel like, I can't believe I'm not moving the needle at all, ask yourself, maybe there's something missing in my kosher that I'm not able to communicate it. Maybe I could raise the profile of my own kosher observance, to learn the laws better, to find only a stricter hashgacha. You have to know, my friends, not all kosher symbols were created equal. I remember someone once told me, oh Rabbi, here this is kosher. It has Hebrew writing on it. Has Hebrew writing on it. I remember once when I was in Israel, and there was a delivery to a butcher, right next to Chafetz Chaim. You guys know that place? Chafetz Chaim, there's like a butcher like near King George, on one of those side streets. So next door there was a non-kosher place. And I saw them unloading things, and in big red letters on every case, you know what it said? Tet, Resh, Yud, Fe Sofit. Treif. So the guy's like, wow, look, Hebrew letters. I'm like, yeah, but you know what they say. Right? In Israel, It used to be a law that you couldn't allow, you were not allowed to have basar lavan. You were not allowed to have non-kosher seafood. But eventually they changed the law to allow it. There are restaurants, there are places that sell taref mamash in Eretz Israel. How do you think they're writing it in Israel? They think they write it in Italian? Prosciutto? Okay. So my friends, not all kosher symbols are created equal. Ask yourself this question. Do I know what the story is over here? Do I understand? I remember vividly a case where there was a certain hashgacha that somebody had. And I wanted to find out if it was a good hashgacha. And I called one of the people who does like the kosher at home. And I said, tell me, you have this hashgacha on your stuff? She said, yes. I said, is it? She says, I stopped using them. I said, why? She said, because the whole thing was a sham. I said, what do you mean? She said, the only time they contacted me in the entire year was to ask me for the check to pay for their supervision. What supervision? They never came to my house one time. You know what the supervision was? They asked me to email them what ingredients I was putting in. You could say whatever you want in the email. Well, that's hashgacha. There's places. There's places. Do your own research. There's places, there's lists that the JSOR has of good kosher symbols where you know that these hashgachot are respectable, that they're checking in the right way, that they're doing the right thing. They tell a story about Rabbi Beryl Wine. Rabbi Beryl Wine was made the head of the OU. Anyway, the first wedding he goes to, he figures, you know what, I'm in charge of the OU now. Let me go see if the mashgiach is doing his job. So he goes into the kitchen. Where's the rabbi? The rabbi is not in the kitchen. He can't find him. Comes outside. He sees that he says the waiter tells him that's the rabbi. He sees the guy filling up his plate, eating from the thing. He goes to the rabbi. He says, Rabbi, you eating this plate? He says, yeah. He goes, how do you know it's kosher? The guy says, oh, it's under the OU. He says, moron, you're the OU. Right? You're trying to communicate to someone about kosher. If you don't keep kosher yourself properly, how do you expect that to come across if you don't have the conviction of doing it in the right way? And if you see that it's not working, maybe you need to do more. And I often wonder, maybe the reason why we're unsuccessful in communicating about Israel and about Judaism to the wider world is because we ourselves are ma'amin ve'eno ma'amin. We need to work on our own love of our own heritage, of our own country, and then maybe if we loved it enough, we'd be able to say words that were really heard. And maybe, if we go back to the end, and this is what we'll end with, if maybe, just maybe, that was why God had to make Noach spend 12.6% of his life building a teva. Because God knows that Noach himself doesn't believe the flood is coming. And Noach is not going to be able to convince anybody that the flood is coming, because you know what? He doesn't believe. So maybe in order to get Noach to believe, God tells him to build a teva that takes him that much time. Hashem should bless us always to double down on perfecting and working on ourselves. And then when we've reached a point of authenticity, then the message that we share comes across in its truth and it doesn't ring hollow. And then maybe we'll be able to influence those around us for the better. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen.